Coming to you live from an abandoned storage locker somewhere in Mesa, Arizona. You're tuned into the Important Nonsense Podcast with Steve Bonham.
Attention, Alan Hearn's mom. His knee is better. You can stop worrying.
And Neil Smith.
Even with the concussion, as long as he's cleared, probably don't have a better option.
Ooh, boom shakalaka.
Welcome in. It's the Important Nonsense Podcast. Steve Bonham. That's Mason Cameron. That is not Neil Smith. He is joining us today, coming in from the Thursday show. So, it's such a hit last week. Why not do it again? Right, Mason?
I mean, you didn't even have to tell anybody. They probably wouldn't have even noticed that it wasn't Neil, to be honest.
Right. But again, you don't have the flannel on, so you're not wearing the Colorado uniform.
You're right. I'm in disguise.
It would have been very confusing for everybody out there.
You know, this is like a close second. This is like the secondary uniform, the fake wool jacket. Yeah.
The heavy hoodie. Yeah. That's what it is.
Funny story actually about one of these. I used to work at a Nordstrom. Brandon Stokely came into the Nordstrom, bought two of these. I was like, oh, Brandon Stokely's just like all of us, just a regular zip up. The zip ups were like $250 a piece.
Nice. That sounds about right.
Right.
I believe that. I believe that for sure. So you can find me everywhere at nonsense_Steve. You can find Mason everywhere at football_Mace. It's on the screen there. And then, of course, check us out, patreon.com/importantnonsense. You can sign up there to get all of Mason's work in the sports betting and the DFS area over there. Also, it gives you access to our Discord, so you can ask us all your start-sit questions and just come enjoy the party in there. It's always a good time.
All of our picks in the Discord every week. Vishal is an absolute killer. Odds makers are terrified of him.
Specifically Vishal. Yeah.
So come out.
You too. You're doing pretty good on which one is it? Money line?
I'm doing good on the money line.
Get the money line.
I wish I could take the whole triple crown like V has. V is
roasting
assassin.
The world though in the every other category. He's top
absolutely.
5, I think, still in everything.
And absolutely everything.
At least top 10. He's crushing it right now. All right, let's get into this though. We got a bunch of news from this week. First of all, let's start with non-running back news. All right, there's a smattering of some things. Zach Wilson, he got hurt again because that's kind of what he's done so far. This time it's a thigh bruise. It's on the same leg where he had the PCL injury. He has said that the knee isn't stable, which does not sound good. I would think you would definitely want the knee to be stable. He has also not looked good in any way, shape, or form. I mentioned it in my pick'ems in the Discord chat that Elijah Moore was my over because he had been consistently good over the last month. However, that was all without Zach Wilson. So we'll see what happens. And he hits the under, of course.
Plummets, yeah.
Because why not? Like, basically, you had Elijah Moore, you had Jamison Crowder, even Ty Johnson. Everybody on the Jets with Zach Wilson in the lineup was a nightmare to play. At this point, are you sitting all Jets if it's still Zach Wilson?
I mean, I think you have to. I think you just absolutely have to. The production of the team, it's noticeable when a guy like Joe Flacco, Mike White,
yeah,
and
are like clearly outplaying the guy who was the number 2 overall pick.
It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And we talk about this a lot in terms of like what is a young quarterback's threshold before you effectively ruin him. Right. And I think we're quickly approaching that.
Get in there.
That possibility with Zach Wilson because whatever confidence he had in college, he does not have right now.
Yeah.
They do not have the protection to keep him upright. And even when they do, he feels phantom pressure. It's a really similar situation to when Baker Mayfield was, in his rookie season, and he knew exactly who was protecting his blind side. And he felt pressure even when there was no pressure. Yeah. And that's a very similar situation you're getting with Wilson in the fact that, well, for one, he's feeling things that aren't there. It's rushing his process and he's not being able to read the field, and it's making plays like the one that we saw this last week where he throws it at Ty Johnson's back when they're both running, downfield. It's just those type of plays that it's like, yeah, you can't blame him for that, but it's like, well, I mean, you have to be cognizant enough of what you're doing, and the game is moving way too fast for him right now.
Yeah, 100%. Better news, Kyler Murray back at practice. Looks like he's back on track to finally be back this week. Thank God. Aaron Rodgers dealing with a fractured toe injury. He said that he's going to avoid the surgery right now until possibly the offseason, but the surgery is supposed to be minor enough that he wouldn't actually miss any time, even if he went through with it. So I don't know why he's not, especially considering the fact they're on the bye.
Joe Buck put it best. He immunized the toe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 100%. So he's on the bye this week. He's hoping that the week off to rest and do basically nothing is going to help it get better. I don't think that's how fractured toes work. I'm not a doctor of any kind, but apparently Aaron Rodgers is. So,
but to be fair, I don't know a more resilient body part than the toes. I have never stubbed
Feels like
toe.
there's a backstory there, but I don't really want to get into it.
I have never stubbed a toe and haven't immediately thought that it was broken into a million pieces.
That's fair.
So
that's fair. Let's see. What do we got? Jalen Hurts had an ankle stepped on by a lineman this week. That's exciting. It's created what our guy, Edwin Porras, has called a quote unquote mini high ankle sprain, which makes him a high risk to miss this week. All right. I'm just going to say it. I'm going to put it out there in the universe. Sneaky ad. Is Minshew Mania back? Are we doing this? Am I ready to get my heart broken again?
You have a mustache. I have a mustache. I don't think we ever left. Like, let's go. Let's do it. I'm riding. I know you are too.
My love for Gardner Minshew will never fade. All right. The man who lives in an RV and just travels around the country in his free time. Amazing. Amazing. Yeah, I look, I love Jalen Hurts. I've been on the Jalen Hurts bandwagon, but if we can get at least 1 week in of Minshew Mania, I'm all about it. Just and yeah, especially too for what Hurts does, like, you know, Lamar Jackson light, basically. You definitely don't want to be messing around with an ankle injury. I feel like him not being mobile is going to be a major impact to what it is he does that makes him useful for fantasy purposes.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing about it is those guys that use that athleticism to their advantage to give you that rushing floor, you just don't want to play around with the feet, the ankles, the legs. Like, those things are your money maker as a player. And you don't, like, somebody needs to be in your corner saying, we know you can play, but you shouldn't.
Yeah, 100%. They got to be looking out for the best interest of him. Right.
Yeah. Especially as a young player.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Because and with all the rumors that have been going around, too, with Watson and all that, like, you have to know that it's in his mind that he has to be out there performing. He doesn't want to be sitting on the bench doing nothing.
Right.
Darren Waller left his Thanksgiving Day game last week and has not returned to practice yet this week. Obviously, with tight end being what it is, if he plays, you have to play him. You don't really have a choice there. If he's out, though, do you have any interest at all in streaming Foster Moreau or somebody else at the tight end position?
I mean, you could, because you've seen that value in the offense. Like, Foster, I mean, I don't have the numbers right in front of me at the second, but I'm pretty sure that he had a decent showing in relief there. So, like you said,
past week, you mean? I can look at it real quick.
It's just like one of those, like you said, the tight end position is so scarce that really any flyer you could find is kind of sometimes worth the play, depending on what you need from your matchup.
Yeah, he this past week in the Thanksgiving game, he had 5 targets, only caught one of them for 3 yards. But I believe what you're thinking of is one of the weeks that Waller missed. He caught 6 of his 6 targets for 60 yards and a touchdown.
You're right.
He had the Devil game. He went 6-6-6 with a 6-point touchdown.
That's right.
But yeah, it's like anything else. Like, it's not like he's going to get a huge amount of volume. This isn't a Ricky Seals-Jones situation where when Logan Thomas was out, all of a sudden RSJ moved into 100% snap share and was a monster that you had to have in your lineup on a weekly basis. I think Foster Moreau is just another guy who gets thrown into the grab bag at tight end. That's if they fall in the end zone, you win.
Exactly. Yeah. Because that is, you've put it like this all season, and I'm sure you've been telling everybody all season there are 2, 3, 4 guys, and then it's just literally put them all in a hat. It doesn't really matter.
Doesn't matter at all.
Because
Not even a little bit.
You're risking the same thing with all of them.
100%. AJ Brown went to IR, so that means he's going to be out at least 3 games. He joins Julio Jones, who was already on IR. It is a complete and total mess in Tennessee. At this point, are there any skill players currently on the Titans that are still even worth rostering? Because like Anthony Firser is still healthy, but you wouldn't know that from his stat lines. You wouldn't know that from what he's done this season.
I mean, like you could probably still be rolling with Tannehill in a sense that like he can do some things, but I don't think they have any weapon that I'm actually after. What's the name of the kid that's in relief there? I always forget his name. At wide receiver.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Nick Akeem Westbrook or something like that.
Yeah.
I forget his name off the top of my head. Apologies, but he looks good. I actually had to chart one of their games. That game, the game that the last time they had AJ Brown and Julio both out, and he looks like he is up to the challenge. But the problem is that nothing there excites me in terms of what their offense is going to do as a whole. I don't see a lot of production there in general. So like, yes, if you're really risking it, you might go that way, but I hope you got some other spots. I hope you have some other options there because nothing excites me about that offense. And I mean, they were smart enough to drop AP. I'll just say that. Yeah.
And I'm trying to see like if he's creeped up the list at all here.
And I mean, maybe Hilliard had a decent showing, but
let's see. It doesn't look like it, or maybe I'm just not filtering properly. This is great podcasting, by the way. People are loving this out there.
Of course.
Where are they?
This is all part of the show anyway. We just have 100%. To add this filler so that you guys get to look at us for a little bit longer.
100%. Oh, you know what? I'm throwing myself off because the Titans are on the bye this week, aren't they?
Oh, that's right.
That's why.
That is correct.
That is why he is not currently listed.
That'll throw the wrench into that.
I'm like, why isn't he ranked here on the ECR? It's because the Titans aren't actually playing this week. So yes, that's why. No, I agree with you though. Dontrell Hilliard is the pass catching back on that offense. I definitely would still want him in PPR. Jeremy McNichols coming back healthy kind of murks that up a little bit, but I still believe he's more of the between the tackles guy, along with Donta Foreman. And then you have Hilliard, who to me is the best all-around back. You saw what Foreman and Hilliard did last week with the limited opportunities that they had. So I think that those are the only guys that I would be interested in. Maybe a Tannehill if you were super desperate at QB, but that's about where you would end up. And we've got Neil. How you doing, Neil? How's it going, buddy? I'm sure life is beating you up over there today.
I just had to work late. It's not anything the listening audience needs to concern itself with. It's happening periodically. We're getting to the end of the year. Demands are what they are. So I apologize for being tardy to the party.
Well, we made it the first 10 minutes and nobody knew I wasn't you. Promise.
Right. Yeah.
We look. If you and I were walking around together, partner, they would assume we were related.
I told him he was just missing the flannel 100%. From the Colorado uniform.
Right.
But otherwise, spot on.
But I let him know, everybody has one of the Sherpa jackets too. So
yeah,
I actually have 2 of those. So, and mine aren't gray. I have a blue one and a brown one. So
yeah, there's a blue one on the rack right there.
I was gonna say.
What do you mean?
Yeah. Well,
you got to diversify the wardrobe.
Do you have a bunch of all-weather gear made by Kuehl yet? Because that's the new hotness.
No, I haven't.
That's what they're doing in the streets. That's what the kids are doing out here.
No, I haven't.
Colorado fashion tips with me and Neil on the
That's right.
Nonsense podcast. This is what the people come here for.
Yeah,
they're not going to come here for fantasy advice.
Yeah, they don't care about fantasy news. I have a lot of data
to back that up.
Yeah. We don't know what we're talking about anyway, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what we were talking about was the Titans being an absolute disaster.
Yes.
But we're going to move past that.
All right. So we're going to move into the next area of of disasters.
Exactly. So next on my list, we've got wide receiver / running back, because who knows what he actually is anymore. Debo Samuel. He's dealing with a groin injury. It's going to keep him out 1 to 2 weeks. What kind of impact is that going to have on the San Francisco offense right now? Because It's been bizarre seeing Brandon Ayuk get a bigger role, and mainly he's getting a bigger role because he's getting the Debo targets. And it's not that he's not there. It's that Debo has somehow become the number one running back in San Francisco. I don't know what that is about. But now you've got Mitchell, who just had 27 carries in a decent game. But Debo Samuel is getting more carries and more work than Jeff Wilson. So, I mean, does this make Jeff Wilson slightly more relevant now if Debo's out? I guess the number 2 back is gone. I don't know what this
honestly
means.
It's interesting because Jeff Wilson has been the pure backup when Mitchell is playing. So he's not even the pass catching back. What I mean is he is the literal backup running back.
He's the in case of emergency break glass.
Yeah, because Jermichael, when he's been available, Jermichael Hasty has still been the pass catching running back when Mitchell and Hasty and Wilson are all active. Those are the 3 that will be active because Trey Sermon at that point is a healthy scratch.
Right.
So if you're asking me,
and he's also hurt now too.
Right. So from my end, I don't think Jeff Wilson's job changes. I think Brandon Ayuk to the moon. George Kittle gets a bump even a little bit more on top of what he already would have had, which is pretty high because at this point he's ostensibly at least healthy. So those are the 2 that I would say get the biggest uptick. And then Mitchell, for as long as he's going to be healthy, seems to be the true RB1. Jeff Wilson's job for me doesn't change because Hasty is actually returning to practice. So for me, the ones that I think get an uptick are Ayuk and Kittle. And then from there, Mitchell maybe gets a slight increase in workload.
Yeah.
And then Hasty will have his job and Wilson will have his job. But I don't know that it trickles down enough to make me change my outlook on anybody that isn't the big guys that are there. So I'm curious, is that the consensus in the room or is that just how I read the situation?
I would agree with you in the sense that I would rank Brandon Ayuk now higher than I have. But like right now, the ECR has him at wide receiver 21. In PPR. That feels way high for me. I feel like people are putting him right back to where they wanted him to be in the preseason because they're thinking, oh, well, the only problem was Debo was in his way. So now it's got to be exactly like I predicted it.
I will say I get that thought process because that thought process is rooted in a certain amount of like things we saw before. I just don't know if it holds water. I'm just saying I'm not going to call anybody crazy for that per se.
Sure. But my point here is, so basically he was in the doghouse, then they get to the bye week and he does literally nothing against Indy. But since week 8, when they played Chicago, he's had 7 targets, 8, 4, 7, and 6. So Ayuk's been a consistent part of this offense. Do I suddenly believe that the now 2 or 3 targets a game that Debo has been getting because he's been getting a majority of his work out of the backfield? Do I suddenly believe that all of that goes straight to Ayuk? I mean, George Kittle only had 2 targets last game. I feel like that's more likely to go up than Ayuk to get to 15 targets.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both of them have definitely been taking up that slack in the passing game, and I think that probably continues. And you know what? I have to commend Neil because that breakdown of the backfield was perfect in a backfield that I've effectively washed my hands of early on in this season. And I hope that most of you have the self-respect to do the same.
Unless you won the Mitchell sweepstakes off the waiver wire.
Right. Yeah, exactly. The thing is that he's really the only guy that should excite you in that backfield. Like you just broke down, it is such a headache, head scratcher of what's really going to happen in that backfield to the point that we actually have Debo Samuel as a number 1 running back, like a actual playable running back. Yeah. And that's insane to think about, to the point that I want no part of it. And I'm sick to my stomach that I drafted Trey Sermon in Dynasty.
Yeah, that's not looking great right now.
No, that's going to be painful.
Gave Steve Joe Mixon, so I had the privilege of drafting Trey Sermon.
Privilege. You're welcome, by the way. You're welcome. Appreciate that. Hey, you've got a better record than I do in that Dynasty League, so I don't want to hear any.
I don't want to talk about that Dynasty League, and I don't want to talk about it. I'm really unhappy with how that's gone.
Too painful.
How did I lose my entire team in the span of 3 weeks? And when I say that, that's not hyperbole.
Yeah.
I could rattle it off. Like I've lost all my starters in the span of 3 weeks, effectively. I've really never seen anything quite like it.
Well, I mean, we talk about this every year, but are injuries up this year?
Like I feel like they are.
It always feels like it.
It feels like it, but I mean, I don't have any numbers in front of me to support either way, but it just constantly feels like there is an absolute desolate wasteland at running back and tight end,
Mhm.
and even depending on your league, sometimes wide receiver. But
I
we're
think
gonna talk to Edwin about that at some point here in the next week or two. So
for
that's
sure.
definitely.
And I do
a question
have
I wanna ask
some
him.
numbers on that here, but not a lot. But we'll get into that in a little bit here. Let's switch over to running back because that was the main news hub of the entire week. First and foremost, we'll start out with a little bit of positive news. Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram, both back at practice. They both seem to be on pace to be playing against the Cowboys. They listed Kamara as questionable. Seems like he's good to go. However, there is some kind of feeling in the room that they may want to just be overly cautious with Kamara, hold him out this week, give him another 10 days until they come back in week 14 to make sure he's 100% ready to go down the stretch. So again, if you've been without Kamara the last couple weeks, you've already had a backup plan. You got to just keep riding that at this point. We'll see what happens if he's actually active tomorrow. He may have a limited workload, but if he's playing, you got to start him, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Kamara's on that list of if he's playing for you.
Right.
There's no way you have a better option because even 75% of Alvin Kamara is easily an RB2.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. The thing is that if I mean, you can't talk about what ifs on everything, but you sit him and he pops off like
yeah.
I'll never forgive myself.
Yeah, you'd never forgive yourself.
I would be livid for years.
You can deal with putting him in your lineup and maybe he gets 9, maybe he gets 5, but you had to play him.
Yeah.
You'd go,
and I'll put it this way too, because this was a main talking point for us, Neil, in the 32 and 32 series in the summer. The fact that when Taysom Hill is the starting quarterback, Alvin Kamara in those games struggled.
They don't throw it to him at all.
He was a back end RB2. He wasn't involved in the passing game in any way, shape, or form. It was basically a lot of wildcat. And the numbers for Latavius Murray, that RB2 role that's currently occupied by Mark Ingram, didn't change. It was consistent across the board. It was just the numbers for Kamara dipped to a significant extent. So for me, that's my primary concern, is the report that it's going to be Taysom Hill starting tomorrow. So that, I mean, Trevor Siemian's been bad. There's no way around that. I know.
I'm absolutely shocked.
I know you guys are stunned. I understand. All right. I was
actually more impressed at how long it took before the wheels came off again.
Me too.
Because he actually got a couple quality starts in there. And that was always the problem in Denver.
He looked competent for more
that
than
was
you
always
expected.
the problem in Denver.
You know what?
He would look competent.
Yeah.
He would look competent in instances.
And that's why he's going to get like 2 or 3 more backup quarterback contracts, and we're going to be like, in like 4 years, we're going to be like, Trevor Siemian's still in the league? Today I learned Trevor Siemian still plays in the NFL.
Like, when he's the backup in Minnesota?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
Just random
to Kellen Mond. Yeah,
to Kellen Mond.
It's one of those like you know, back in the day, we used to grade offensive linemen by like how many starts they had. Oh, you were an all-pro because you started every game, or you started every game over the last 6 seasons. You're going to the Hall of Fame or something like that. And like that's like almost to a T how backup quarterbacks get paid. Like, oh, you made 25 starts. Who cares that you were 5-20 and you were horrible in every single one of those? At least I can say that. Oh, I mean, he's our backup.
At least he's got experience.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I will say what scares me the most about, and this goes back to the 32 and 32 as well. I can't prove that Sean Payton's not a crazy person.
Sure.
He scared me real bad in the preseason. And then he pulled it out at the last minute with the giving the job to Jameis. Sanity reigned at the very end. But remember how close to the wire we got on that?
Yeah.
Where he really wanted to make Taysom Hill a thing. And I believe that he still does. It's
a con. It's a long con. It's a long con. That's why they signed him to that 2-way deal.
Oh, that's the reason.
Because he's like, yeah, sign him to the 2-way deal. I'm not going to play him at quarterback, but I'm going to like give the hint that I might.
Right. Well, it's also, this is the only way I can keep him around.
Exactly.
I can't pay him like
deal. Because if you've never actually broken down that Taysom Hill deal, it's absolutely fascinating.
It's
4 years. He's making $40 million guaranteed, but he could make up to $90 million on the deal if he started X amount of games as the starting quarterback. So I feel like that, to Mason's point, that's kind of why it has taken so long for this change to actually happen. There has to be some clause in there somewhere where he has to play certain percentage. And I feel like if they're still losing games, like you're still trying to win, obviously, but if they're still losing with Taysom Hill, they'll immediately go back to Trevor Siemian as fast as they possibly can. Like this will be a temporary thing because they don't want to pay him that money.
And that's what scares me, though, is what happens. And this is what scared me in the preseason. Ultimately, sanity was restored and it was all
what
good.
What happens if they're winning?
That's what scares me. What happens if Taysom Hill comes in and they do just enough to win 3 games?
Yeah.
What precedent does that set moving forward? Do they retain Jameis, or is it Taysom Hill's job next year? Because that will directly impact the only New Orleans Saint that anyone should really care about for fantasy, which is Alvin Kamara. Because at that point, if I got the news in late August that we knew for sure in 2022 that it was 100% going to be Taysom Hill's starting job, I crater Alvin Kamara 15 spots in my running back rankings.
100%. Yeah.
First thing I do.
Outside of the top 10 for sure.
He becomes RB roughly 20 for me, 15 to 20.
Yeah.
Because they just are not going to throw enough passes for him to matter the way that he has mattered throughout his career. And they also, Taysom Hill is just incapable of doing anything except for running the Wildcat that we've seen so far. Maybe I'm wrong about that and he can prove me wrong. But from all I've seen is it's run the Wildcat. And I've just seen it. You watch him, how he runs that offense. Direct snap to Taysom Hill. Not even a thought at attempting to pass it. Just sprint at 100 miles an hour to the hole, and you hope you get lucky.
I'm trying to think of what a decent comp would be. I would have to think it would be Tim Tebow, right? Like it's a player that's great at quarterback for fantasy purposes because he gives you the rushing yards. He randomly gives you receptions.
I mean, he's Tim Tebow if Tim realized he was right-handed and not left-handed.
Yeah, there you go. And so, he gives you
he
touchdowns,
can
rushing and receiving, and he can throw the ball a little bit, but not great.
Yeah,
like he's not an NFL quarterback by any stretch of the imagination, but for the gadget plays that they use him for, it works.
Let's put it this way: you're in Sean Payton's shoes. You're one of the smarter coaches in the NFL.
Well, supposedly,
right? On paper, the idea I think that he has is that I'm going to hedge my own bet and take a guy that's got a good skill set, a good athleticism that I could teach how to play quarterback. Now, that happens a lot in the modern NFL, especially with young quarterbacks. It doesn't quite happen with a guy like Taysom Hill where you're like, well, I'm going to play him at tight end while I wait and try to teach him how to play quarterback, which I think muddies the water for him there. But he's hedging his bets just in case he thinks I can teach him how to play quarterback. And then you get kind of a discount on a middle to decent level passer because you're still not looking at an insane amount of money. Like if you could actually teach him how to be a reasonable signal caller,
you get
at the top end.
You get slightly worse Jalen Hurts.
Right.
All of the rushing ability with an even more erratic throwing ability.
Right.
And you get a discount on it because whatever we think of Jalen Hurts.
I thought of that as well, but I just thought that wasn't fair to Jalen Hurts.
Well, I was going to say
it is a little mean. It is a little mean.
Cold.
It is.
It was a lot better than that, but
it's relevant in this regard.
Yeah.
You get discount Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
Because Jalen Hurts, whatever we think, whatever his career is going to be in Philly, Jalen Hurts is going to get paid.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jalen Hurts will go start somewhere else in all likelihood, and he's going to get paid. And he'll probably get paid more than what Taysom will ever likely get paid.
And we're talking about in a cap sense, the Saints are back against it. They did the absolute most insane cap gymnastics to get into a playable level this season that I don't know what they're supposed to do. I don't know where they pulled out money to even sign this hybrid deal for Taysom because they are literally up against it to the point that if they end up having to go this section and we're talking about what does that mean for Alvin Kamara, it probably means Alvin Kamara is not part of their plans in the future, which is a crazy thought, but is very likely with how
it's not that crazy given
the
relative age of Alvin Kamara.
Well, and they don't have the money.
Right.
And they're looking at
I think the more real thing is they don't pay Jameis next year.
Yeah, that
yeah,
and then
if you're
Michael
going to
Thomas's
if you have Taysom Hill
later.
start a certain number of games this season and have to pay him and do it again next year, then you can't afford to have two QBs.
Well, and
absolutely.
it's also the Michael Thomas contract comes off the books.
Correct. Yeah.
So
Since you
that'll
make that
also
trade
free
at
up
some
some
point.
money. Yeah.
Talking about that Thursday night game, there was also some talk that Zeke might sit out for some time and rest the knee injury that's been nagging him for the last few weeks. That was immediately squashed by Zeke, the team, and then Jerry Jones while he was sipping his scotch out of his human skull.
No,
have
if
to
you're
do
gonna
that?
do my joke, you got to do it right.
I mean,
drinking. He was sipping
Go
his
ahead.
Johnny Walker Blue out of a human skull.
Out of a human skull.
I
very-
can
it's very
casually
important.
add that in throughout. All right, I don't have to go into all the specifics and do
No,
your
but see,
gimmick
he's
for
only
you,
drinking
okay?
Johnny Walker Blue because anything else would make him poor.
Oh, right.
So
Sorry,
he's
excuse
got to
me.
push the
My
boat
mistake.
out. Yeah,
My mistake.
I mean, Blue might even be a step down for him.
probably.
To be honest.
Probably
Um,
private stock.
But I
Johnny
mean,
Walker.
Zeke still has looked banged up. I feel like he probably should rest, but my gut is saying that he knows he'll be Wally pipped by Tony Pollard if he actually does sit out. So I'm assuming he's just trying to avoid it at all
Boy,
costs.
Steve with the real sauce right there, because I'm not hearing anybody talk about the Wally Pip thing anywhere else other than that. And I've been following that. And
That was a deep cut.
yeah, no, it's true in this case because
But you know what? Speaking of that, I use that term every now and a while. Do people know who Wally Pip was?
no, they know the they don't know the actual person.
They know the context.
They know
of
the
it?
expression. They know the
Mhm.
expression, but they don't know that that's like a real person.
All right, here you
referencing
go.
a real
Strap
situation.
in.
That's
You
not a
want
real
some-
human being's name, is it?
Yes.
Wally Pip.
Wally Pip is a guy.
You want a history lesson? Here
Oh,
you
God.
go.
See, look, Mason doesn't
Do
even
it.
know.
Come on, old man.
Wally
You
Pip.
give me the history
children.
lesson.
Wally Pip was the first baseman for the New York Yankees in the 1920s. Okay. So then one day he comes to the game, right? He's ready to play, and he's asking his teammates in the locker room, hey, do you guys have aspirin? Because he's got a headache. Okay. Manager hears this and says, oh, he's got a headache. Let's give him the day off. So they start the backup, who was Lou Gehrig.
Mhm.
And Lou
Oh.
Gehrig played 2,100 consecutive games.
Oh.
And Wally Pip ended up going to Cincinnati and moving on and never playing. for the
Basically, his
Yankees.
career was over from that day.
Yeah.
Not totally, but he never got back.
So he
to
got
where
a headache,
Hey, wait, real
couldn't play
life
through
question.
it, and he was gone. Yeah.
Have you guys ever met anybody named Wally?
Yeah,
I have not. No.
No, you
I have. I
haven't.
work with a Wally.
That's not a real person. That's not a real human name.
Yes, it
anymore.
is. Yes, it is. It is a real name. That's a real. It's a real thing. Not
That's
many
made
people
up.
go by.
You made
Well,
that
okay.
story up.
Wally,
That
his
never
name's
happened.
not actually Wally, but Wally is a nickname. It's short for something else typically.
Right. Like Walter.
Wallace is actually
Wallace.
Walter
I mean-
Wallace. Yeah, that's usually what you're
No,
doing.
no, but
They go
yeah,
by
but I mean,
Wally.
somebody that goes
They-
by it, like
Yeah,
watch
yeah,
out
I
for
know a
that
guy who
person.
goes by. I know
Oh,
a guy.
yeah,
I work with a
100%.
guy who voluntarily goes by Wally.
He
there you go.
probably can
There's your history
shotgun
lesson, Mason.
quite a beer.
You can win a
Yes,
bar
he
bet.
can. He's actually Steve's neighbor. Not that Steve would know him, but
No.
he lives in Texas and he goes by Wally. And yes, he can shotgun a beer, very effectively.
But there you go. There's your history lesson. Now you know.
Thanks, boys.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
I'll
If
say,
any- so if
appreciate
1920s first baseman for the New York Yankees ever comes up in like a bar trivia contest,
I was just about to say I'm gonna
You're all
kill the
set.
bar trivia for
you
sure.
are all
yeah,
set.
but
buddy.
it's funny we bring that up because I've found that over the years, a lot of people don't realize that Wally Pip, that's like a real guy. It's a real
Right.
story. And they just think it's some expression.
No,
And
they
then I've
just
had people
nod.
ask me,
Yeah.
well, they just nod, but usually some people, more enterprising people would say, what does that mean?
Mhm.
And it's like, you got to get into that story where it's like, nah, it's a real life, literal example of something. And it's funny, just to go back to the Tony Pollard thing, I'm not seeing enough of that in the analysis of this whole situation, where I don't think the industry has necessarily caught up to the idea that Tony Pollard is as good as Ezekiel Elliott at this point.
Well, I mean, our guy Bo has been all in on Tony Pollard.
Well,
just
but
taking that
that's
job.
that's
And of
Bo.
course, the nerd has been telling us Tony Pollard is the best running back in Dallas since the beginning of last season. But he mentioned it
And
in the
there's
chat.
that guy
like-
in the there's that guy in OJ's league that drafted him second overall. So that guy,
Mhm.
he's probably
Yeah.
all over the Pollard train for sure.
Yes, 100%. But no, Tony Pollard is a guy that I've said, he was going high enough in drafts. I feel like he's got standalone value on his own. Like I mentioned it when we talked about our player props last week. Tony Pollard's gone over 70 total yards for most of his games this season. He's had a big role in this offense regardless. He's probably a weekly flex consideration for you, even with Zeke in the lineup. He becomes an easy top 10 guy with Zeke out of the lineup. And I thought that they would at least try to rest Zeke. I mean, they're winning the division fairly easily because they don't have much competition. If I were them, I wouldn't care so much about these odds and ends games in the back end of the season and just try to secure the division, make sure my team is 100% healthy so that when I'm playing real teams in the playoffs, I have a legitimate shot to win instead of getting blown out of the water. But what do I know? I don't know.
You're not rich enough to have input into this, Steve.
Exactly.
You're not Jerry.
I can't have.
You raise a good point. See, this is the way that I look at it. We talk about a lot about contracts and paying running backs and things like this, but we don't talk enough about GMs and their egos. And Jerry has one of the biggest. And the thing is that GMs always want to be proven right. They want the guy they signed to live up to the deal they signed them to. Now, they might play hardball when it comes time to negotiate the contract, but they want their draft picks to re-sign and sign for big money and set new records and do things like that because that looks good on them. So Jerry's a guy that when you have guys like me who sit there and go, look at what's going on, Tony Pollard can do just as much, like don't pay your running backs, it's a big waste of money. Jerry doesn't like hearing guys like me say that. He wants Zeke to do good. He wants Zeke to be this tough back that can take the workload and is earning this money that he's paying him. And so that's why he's sitting here. And I'm a little upset because I picked up Tony Pollard, hoping that I could sit Zeke because he was hurt. And now I'm sitting here stuck in no man's land with both of them, both active because Jerry has an ego. You hear that, Jerry?
No. Jerry doesn't listen to this.
But Jerry also
nor does he get the
Tony
transcript of
Pollard.
it.
So wouldn't he want Tony Pollard to do well?
I mean, yes, but in order for that to happen, as your ego, you have to accept that you made the mistake by selling out a record deal for a running back.
Yes,
because you could have found one elsewhere.
And that's all valid, but I will say I just checked it. We really only have to have this conversation one more season. Yeah. Zeke is under contract one more year, and then they have an out year. I also checked the Alvin Kamara contract, and he's got 2 more years before they have an out year on that. For the record, he'll be 28 by the time that happens.
Right.
So they've got 2 years to fix their cap, and by then he'll be 28. We don't even know what that'll turn into. They might let it ride. They got extension years. Same thing with Zeke, but I think at this point, it's an ego-driven thing. He wants him to play. He wants him out there. I think you mentioned Jerry has an ego. How many other GMs do you know that have their own radio show where they themselves give you updates on their team?
I was just about to say, and how many GMs are telling you the health status of your star running back?
Yeah.
Like that everybody else is in a confusion of maybe he plays, maybe he doesn't. They're talking to the traders, the team, and maybe he plays. And then all of a sudden Jerry comes out and goes, he's playing.
Yeah.
Like that's not typical.
So my greater point is, I think for this year, yes, this is a valid conversation, and it's frustrating, to your point, Mason, that this is what's going on. Unfortunately, it's not very surprising, given the individuals involved. And also, fortunately, we really only have to live in this world that exists this way, I think, for one more season. And then at that point, the contract thing becomes way less relevant. And at that point, if it is still Tony Pollard, man, wheels up on Tony Pollard.
Is this year 3 of Tony Pollard?
I believe so.
I think so, yeah.
Because if that's the case, wouldn't he also be a free agent after next season?
He would be, but if they decide they're going to have to pick one or the other, I feel like,
you definitely
Pollard
pick
would
Pollard.
be the one you choose. He's younger, way less tread on the tires,
and just the draft capital. Like he's not a top 5 pick that's going to warrant $10 million a year contract.
Yeah, he was drafted in 2019. So yes, they have one more year of Tony Pollard on the cheap. But given how that could actually work, realistically speaking, it would still be infinitely cheaper to sign Tony 100%. Pollard to another 4-year deal. And then also by that point, Tony Pollard would be 29 coming out. Maybe it's only a 3-year deal, and they could give him a good chunk of change. And I don't know, it would be a tough one for Tony Pollard. Somebody would be needing to offer you even more money than that, and you'd have to go and learn a new system, blah, 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 blip, blip, blip. Path of least resistance probably is just stay there, cash your huge Texas paycheck.
Right.
And then you get to be the guy for 3 years.
100%.
The only problem, Neil, is that that's smart.
I know.
Wouldn't do
There it
smart.
is.
I applied logic to a Jerry Jones situation.
Exactly.
Never happens.
Critical
That's
flaw.
the hang up.
Right.
Yeah. So Ezekiel Elliott, 6 more years?
Yeah.
Exactly.
100%.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. 90 million?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, 100. Okay. Yeah. Give him the 10 million signing.
Yeah,
bonus.
they're gonna make him, big quarterback,
highest paid
money
running
at
back. Again.
Christian McCaffrey rolled his ankle. His year is officially over. Since he had his historic 2019 season, he has played a total of 10 games. That's fairly sad. And as somebody who took Christian McCaffrey in a startup right after that 2019 season, I'm hurt about that.
I'll never financially recover from this decision.
I will never financially recover from this.
It's over.
So Chuba Hubbard, he is apparently the back to have in the backfield, right?
Right. Literally the week after I drop him for taking up too much space on my roster.
I wouldn't feel too bad about it, Mason.
Yeah.
Are you really worried about missing that 10 from Chuba Hubbard that you were probably going to get?
It's hard out here, Neil. What do you mean? I had to play Ty Johnson last week.
Oh,
I had to play
okay.
Ty Johnson.
You're going to lecture me after last week about it's hard out here when I got yelled at effectively for trying to recommend Cedric Wilson, and people are like, "I bet you have better options." And then Cedric Wilson goes over 100 yards. Yeah, you think I forgot about that, didn't you? Eat it.
I was hoping that he wasn't going to say anything. Everybody.
Yeah, no, I'm not that big of a man. I'm not that big of a man, Mason.
No.
I'm certainly petty enough to bring this up on the.
Yeah, I was going to say Neil wears petty well.
Yeah. Oh, very well. I learned from the best with my co-host over the years.
Look, I got to tell you, he went for over 100. He had a great game. I still wanted to start him.
Hey,
I knew the result, and I just didn't care. Wanted to trust him.
That's just now I'm just flagrantly off base. But I'm just saying, Chuba Hubbard. Just to finish that, I'm not overly excited about it.
Rest of season, is he top 24? Is he an RB2 at least?
It's like borderline for me. He's
got to be there, right?
He's like 24
because it's such a wasteland. He's got to be in the conversation. And there's a possibility. Granted, it's a small possibility, but a possibility that because the Panthers are on the bye week this week, that Chuba Hubbard could somehow be available in your league. So if someone has Chuba still out there, or maybe your trade deadline hasn't hit yet and you feel like you could get him relatively cheap because somebody needs to win a game and Chuba being on the bye doesn't help them, maybe you could get a deal done to get a guy who should be a back-end RB2 at least. Certainly flex consideration at worst.
Well, and you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and say this. Chuba Hubbard needs to be their running back going forward. I understand that he's not anywhere near as good as Christian McCaffrey, and I say this as a big Christian McCaffrey fan. He's the pride of my hometown. He went to Valor High School, right down the street from where I went to high school. Watched the kid play. He's the pride of our hometown. He needs to go be playing slot receiver if he wants to continue on playing in the NFL. He does not have the body to take the wear and tear. And I know that we're a site, and I completely agree. We're a site that largely believes that injury history or in that injury prone is a myth, and I completely agree. But my Lord, I cannot for the life of me continue to trust my first round draft picks into a back like Christian McCaffrey, knowing he's going to miss portions of time constantly, not be able to stay on the field. It's just tough to really trust that type of draft capital with that type of player.
He's going to be a tough one to rank for next year. I will say.
Well, here's what I would say too is I don't think I wouldn't go as far as you're going and saying that Chuba should be the guy going forward. What I would say is they cannot put the 2019 workload on him like they've been trying to do. That's the main issue. That's the primary problem here is that the first, week 1, he had 30 total touches. Week 2, he had 29. And then he gets, crushed.
You're going to get somebody
in
killed.
week 3. And then he comes back and all of a sudden they've eased off. He's still around 20 touches a game for 3 games in a row. And he gets hurt again, rolls the ankle in week 12. You had 30 plus touches a game in that 2019 season when he was dominating touching the ball and was a huge focal point of their offense. He was the only guy. But remember, before Christian McCaffrey existed, Remember the headache and nightmare that the backfield was in Carolina with D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart, the two-headed monster. There is enough of that offense that you can support 2 running backs in that system. I feel like Christian McCaffrey could very easily be the pass-catching back and the third down guy. Stop using him between the tackles. Stop having him run into 300-pound linemen. Let Chuba Hubbard do that. Let him be the bowling ball that rolls its way between the 20s and give the passing downs and give the red zone work to Christian McCaffrey.
Limited sample, but I think that's kind of what the idea was with Mike Davis. And when CMC and him were both healthy for that brief window in time was, hey, Mike Davis, we don't value you. Run directly into that large man. Yeah, run directly into that car crash. Christian, you're coming out of the game. Yeah. You're not doing that. Yeah. You're going to go sit here and have some blue. And then we're just going to destroy Mike Davis's body. Yeah. And it got to a point where it's like, yeah, that's ultimately what happened. He's never really been the same since he had to. Christian McCaffrey 100%. Eventually gets hurt. Mike Davis has to assume the load. Mike Davis has never been the same since then. And it's just the nature of running back. How many car crashes can you be in before something finally permanently goes wrong?
Right. Yeah.
It's just not doable.
100%.
So, but it's what's crazy is I don't see how they don't understand this. That's what concerns me. Is that this? I feel like this is kind of obvious.
Well, it isn't
you got
even
this guy,
because, like you said, for next year, I don't even know. That's another deeper discussion we should have later.
Well,
in December.
I was going to say that'll be a wrap up type of conversation. But how do you rank him?
I'm not even concerned about how you rank him. I'm concerned about how do I project that backfield? Because what I believe should happen is you should be giving at least 40% of the snaps to someone that isn't Christian McCaffrey, whether that's Chuba or they bring in somebody because they don't believe he can handle it.
Royce Freeman. Bring him back.
We thought that too, and that obviously didn't work out. But let's move on from the Panthers for now. Dalvin Cook has a shoulder joint injury. He could theoretically play through it. They're calling him day to day, but our guy Edwin Porras says that the best case scenario here really should be 2 to 4 weeks. The Vikings are hoping that they can have him back for a potential playoff run because the NFC is so bad that Minnesota is still basically a playoff team at this point. So we're looking at about a month maybe without Dalvin Cook. Alexander Madison, where are we at? Top 20, top 10, top 15? How high does he move?
Yes. He's
9.
Yes to all of it.
9 for this week for me in my running back rankings.
And I agree. Yep. I think
now
that
he's RB9 in the ECR as well. Yeah.
I think that when we look at Alexander Madison, we look at one of the only backs that carries actual value as I thoroughly do not believe in drafting handcuffs and redraft. I think that you're better off taking somebody else's handcuff and gouging them for it. If that's really your direction you want to go.
Right. We call that the Jack Kavanaugh special.
Yeah, exactly. Jack is slick. That's why he's got that mustache.
That's right.
So
curls at the end and quick.
So pure evil.
Yeah,
that's the sign of you got the curl mustache.
Right. You don't want to encounter him near train tracks. It's
it's a real bad
rough situation.
So that's exactly where I said. I think that in the Vikings are one of those teams that, from a schematic standpoint, when Madison comes in the game, their offense doesn't change all that much. Now, Madison shows that there is a level of difference between backs that is not to the point that running backs all in all do not matter, because at the top end they can be better than a replacement level back. But Alexander Madison shows us that your offense can continue to effectively run with a insert name back. And Alexander Madison happens to be one of the better backs. That's why I think I'm so excited about it, because I think he carries value on a lot of offenses, and he could start in a number of offenses possibly. But in the one that he's going into, they're going to step in seamlessly and use him just like they do Dalvin. Or maybe not just like, but very, very similarly.
So Madison for sure. Oh yeah, see, he knows. He knows how great
it
is.
A great mustache, Jack. You don't hear it enough, Jack. Your mustache is beautiful. Keep going.
So in addition to Madison, is there any interest in maybe stashing or picking up Kene Wangu?
Not on my end, not really.
I mean, he's going to get snaps. He's going to have some involvement in the offense.
I acknowledge this, but this is kind of a short-term thing. It sounds like you're talking about getting ready to try and work something out for getting ready to run up to your fantasy playoffs, I'd have to be really desperate.
Well, I
to
mean,
me, it's a name you flag
Okay.
for emergency. You know, in case something goes wrong, maybe that's a name you look at.
See, that's what I'm thinking of too, because they're really trying to make this playoff push. Honestly, if they feel like he could play through it, I feel like you would have Dalvin Cook back as soon as possible. However, let's say, for example, hypothetically speaking, Dalvin Cook is out 2 to 4 weeks. They feel like they want to just preserve him, hope they make a playoff run. Alexander Madison is the guy. He goes down. At that point, is Kene Wangu somebody who's in the top 24, top 30? Flex consideration, back end
30
RB2?
for sure.
Yeah.
Because anybody who starts top 30, even like Jermar Jefferson, let's say Jamal Williams went down, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'll get there, I'm sure. But just for foreshadowing purposes, let's say same question for Jermar Jefferson. Would Jermar Jefferson, if he had the whole job, effectively be top 30? Yeah, he would be, because it's just a volume game. And that's what running back is right now at this point, because you're talking about the back end of RB2 is like Devonta Freeman.
Right.
Gross.
Yeah.
Like it gets ugly in a hurry.
Yeah.
And if you need to go all the way to 30, you're talking about like Alex Collins, who's been utterly useless. So if you're telling me my choice is Alex Collins, who has done nothing, or the opportunity that maybe Wangu or Jefferson could do something, I'll take the latter every time.
Sure. And that's it's just a little bit confusing to me. I think that's the name that you need to know when I feel like that's a guy that you can very easily stash, because like right now, I know it's talking about like start sits and its current rankings, but Kene Wangu for this week specifically in the ECR right now is sitting at 57. He's sitting behind guys like Jarrett Patterson, who is the rookie backup to Antonio Gibson with JD McKissick out with a concussion. He's sitting behind guys like Eno Benjamin, our guy Kenny Gainwell, who's been a healthy scratch, Carlos Hyde,
Kyle Juszczyk.
I would take Kene Wangu over all of those guys, because he has that ceiling of something happens to Madison, all of a sudden he is the back, and he's shown it on punt and kick returns. He's got explosive play, big play ability.
You want to know what's funny is in the ECR, they have him literally right next to Jermar Jefferson, and I was not looking at that when I went there. It's literally right next to him.
Yeah, you were.
You knew it.
Oh, yeah. That's right. I'm that professional.
See, and I agree. I agree.
Well, I mean, so you already kind of alluded to it there. We'll move on.
Hold on, Mason. Do you want to finish your thought there?
No. I was just gonna say I agree there. I think the upside is huge. You know, and we're talking about guys like Alex Collins. Like, I had somebody trade forAlex Collins in a league a couple weeks ago. So it's hard out there at running back.
It's not even
any advantage you can get. Go for it. Go for it.
It's not even being completely desperate yourself. For me, it's always if I have a deep enough bench and I have guys on my bench who aren't doing anything and have no path to productivity, I'd rather drop them or a backup defense or a backup kicker.
Right.
Or if we
can do that, we can do the useless Sammy Watkins. Go. We'll go round the horn.
Yeah, I'd cut Sammy Watkins 100%.
We can go round the horn on Robbie Anderson. Keep going. I got plenty of these.
This is my favorite part of the show every week for sure.
But we're at the point in the season where we're week 13. You've got this week and then next week with buys. If your quarterback has already had their bye, you can cut your backup quarterback and pick up Kene Wangu. Get a lottery ticket on your bench that could win you a championship. That isn't going to happen with a backup defense or a number 2 kicker. Why do you care in 2 kickers?
Yeah, you don't need that anymore now that we're getting to the end of the buys. Yeah. We only have like one more week of buys. Not counting this week, we have one more week of buys,
right,
I believe.
Correct. Yeah. Deandre Swift sprained his AC joint on the Thanksgiving game. Report is he could miss multiple weeks. While the Lions are going to be cautious with their franchise player, how high does this move Jamal Williams up the list for you? To me, it's top 10.
Yeah.
He does everything. I mean, he was a borderline top 15, top 20 guy for a couple of weeks when they were both playing.
Mm-hmm.
So
they have nothing else.
Yeah,
they have nothing else.
it just proves that we live in the alternate universe, and there's another universe, which is the regular one, where DeAndre Swift did all the normal things, and the Jamal Williams pickup was just nothing like it was supposed to be. But it's not. We live in the alternate universe.
Why do you hate Jamal Williams so much?
No, I don't. I actually think he's hilarious, and I'm glad that we lived in this alternate universe where he came about, because I love hearing his quotes. They're hilarious.
100%.
But the guy can do things, and we've seen that. So I would definitely be excited about him moving forward. Now, what hurts me here is that what they've done with DeAndre Swift throughout the season by making him questionable. They talk about it on the Friday show every single week. That is a running joke that DeAndre Swift was questionable every single practice and ended up playing without any, limited nature. Right. And so that's what worries me moving forward, is that I can't trust their staff to accurately display to me his health and status moving forward. So
no, and even if you could, I don't trust it right now, especially because of how they're describing the injury. So let's just talk short-term, long-term, right, for a second.
Yeah.
Short-term, this immediate week, I don't see how there's any chance you could realistically be starting DeAndre Swift. I think it's Jamal Williams' job for this week, and then he'll be spelled by Jermar Jefferson, who I mentioned a moment ago, who, weirdly, just as an aside, Jermar Jefferson is not terrible.
No, we talked about him on the NFL draft show.
Yeah, for like a 7th round pick, guy's got some skills. So he's not bad. To your point about the franchise player, I think in this case they probably will. They're not playing for anything. Mm-hmm. They know that. They know this. So it's like, why would I risk sending DeAndre Swift back out there, who in reality is he's my best offensive player? It is not close. He's the only thing on that offense.
But again, you're applying logic to the line.
To Dan Campbell? Yeah, you can't apply logic to Dan Campbell.
Because to what Mason just said, he has been listed as questionable every single week up to this point and has still played through.
Yeah, but I think he's a little more hurt now than
at any point in time they could have sat him out and would have been justified, and they didn't. So now they actually have to sit him out. What I like as a manager of DeAndre Swift, I believe he misses this week. I believe he probably also misses next week as well. The injury happened on Thanksgiving. So effectively, he's getting 2.5 weeks. He's basically getting 3 full game weeks to get himself right, come back healthy. And I think for your fantasy playoffs, he should be there and you should be fine. Hopefully you were able to get Jamal Williams as that handcuff, but I mean, I don't know.
The best laid plans
we've talked about the fact that running back's a barren wasteland.
And just to add another point, the Lions still have 0 wins. Yeah. Now, we can all say that in the grand scheme of things, playing for a single win means absolutely nothing. Mm-hmm. But
they already have a tie. They're not going to go completely
I think it's hilarious that they have a tie, too, by the way. I think that
they're going to go 16-1. They'll be fine with that.
That's further proof that we're the
it's like, hey, we got a tie. It counts. That's
but
half a win.
I don't see a guy like Dan Campbell, if he has the opportunity to sit him. You know what I mean?
They're not going to sit him for the season.
I never said that I thought he was done for the season. I'm just saying
I'm just
this
saying,
week and for next week.
I'm just saying that in a general sense that their hopes are probably to get him back, even if it makes no sense. And if wiser people were in charge of that, they would be sitting him for effectively longer than
they'd mothball him for the season at this point.
Exactly.
If you had different people running that organization, he'd be already on IR.
And we hear about their ineptitude all the time on Jack's show with Jerry Ball. Jerry shares constantly about how the team, they have this pride and they should, but they don't always make the wisest decisions for their players and for their franchise, and it shows constantly. And this is kind of one of those things where that. We're talking about a relatively minor injury for DeAndre Swift, but these type of things flare up and become worse over time. And who knows exactly where we sit in 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks or in a year from now or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. To your point, nobody wants to go over. You don't want to be the Cleveland Browns.
Right.
And Dan Campbell,
the Lions again,
as the guy who would want to go out with a win and get as many wins as possible. If his team is healthy, he's going to play him. So I think 2 weeks for me is my estimation. We'll see what happens.
To your point, I'm not worried about not having him for the fantasy playoffs at this point.
And for what it's
worth,
2
quick hitters. We'll get there real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, Michael Carter, high ankle sprain. That happened before our show last week, but we just talked about the Thanksgiving games, so we really didn't get to touch on it. He's on IR. He's going to miss the next 3 to 4 games. Is there anybody, we already talked about, anybody worth having on New York? Not really. Not until they know that Zach Wilson's not playing. If it's any quarterback other than Zach Wilson, sure.
Well, Neil,
I'd still,
maybe you talked. We talked a little bit about this earlier. So, Neil, what do you think?
Tevin Coleman. I'll take a flyer on Tevin Coleman as a flex level running back. He had a 10 last week.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that the Zach Wilson thing is troubling because when he's in there, that whole offense hits utter rock bottom.
Yeah.
But if there's anything, you said, is there anyone worth having? I would take a shot on Tevin Coleman just based on the idea that at this point, he's in that committee. He'll get some level of running work, and maybe he can fall into the end zone for you. And bonus, it costs you nothing to roster Tevin Coleman.
Right.
And I will say, this is only good for 2 more weeks on Tevin Coleman.
Yeah.
It's a Band-Aid. So if you need a Band-Aid, Tevin Coleman is a pretty good Band-Aid. Yeah, it's literally the only thing I'm interested in, though.
Well, to me, at this point, I think it's also interesting if somebody's like a contender or something looking to acquire Michael Carter and you've got him, this may be an interesting sell opportunity. To get rid of him.
Yeah,
because
if you want off the rodeo.
As I've said several times over, Michael Carter's best numbers, just like Elijah Moore, their best numbers offensively all season long have been when Zach Wilson is not playing. So if by the time Michael Carter gets back, Zach Wilson is still the quarterback, I don't want Michael Carter in my starting lineup. And I feel like he's going to burn anybody that plays him in that scenario. So we'll see what happens there. We are still, for whatever reason, obligated to mention Miles Sanders. I guess he's still in the league. But he did aggravate his ankle injury. There's a subset of people out there that still believe Miles Sanders is a running back. I don't know why.
I'm sorry, I just had to self-censor something so hard that it short-circuited my brain. Because
you know what it is? I think
I was working on would have came out of my face.
The NFL is all about inclusion. There must be like an NFL Braille available, like box scores, so you can't actually see Miles Sanders play. So
I was about to make a very political comment, which I know is not welcome on this show, and it would have got us in trouble. I had to stop it.
Braille box scores. That's the only
explanation
for Miles Sanders still having a following. But he aggravated the ankle injury again. I still believe it's worth stashing Jordan Howard on the back end of your roster. Again, same deal. Like, he cannot stay healthy. They will not give the ball to Kenny Gainwell, #fire Sirianni. So they keep giving Jordan Howard work when Miles Sanders isn't in there. I don't know, whatever.
Look, Jordan Howard's been decent with the
if you're desperate at running back, it'll do something for you.
It's the same thing as Tevin Coleman.
Yeah.
I don't really believe in it, but it keeps happening.
Right.
And there's an opportunity there. And that's how bad running back is right now.
Yeah. All right. So speaking of running back, we'll get to the meat and potatoes of the conversations. This is what I had here. So as much as I don't want to buy in to the noise that we have to listen to all offseason, is there some credence to zero RB? Does it still make sense to aim for a running back early in your redraft leagues? Because top 10 running backs in ADP coming into this season combined to this point have missed 22 games. So average of 2 games missed. And that includes guys like Christian McCaffrey and Derrick Henry, who will miss the rest of the season. So it'll be a minimum of 3 games per player that they have missed. So when you look at guys who have played a minimum of 9 games so far, top 10, you have 5 of the preseason top 10 are still ranked in the top 10. Zeke, Austin Eckler, and Jonathan Taylor have not missed a game yet and are still in the top 10. Nick Chubb is 9th. Dalvin Cook, who we've talked about, is currently 10th. You've got Najee Harris, who was RB11 in ADP. Joe Mixon was RB13. Deandre Swift, who again was RB18 and on ESPN was going behind Josh Jacobs and Miles Sanders.
I want to thank them for that, though, ultimately, because we've whined about that all offseason. And I want to just say, thank you, ESPN, because it allowed me to have so many shares of DeAndre Swift for this year. It was great. If you want to do that with other players I like in future years, Help me out, man. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Find a way to get Jalen Waddle's ADP down for me. That'd be fantastic too.
I send friends and family their rankings so that I can get a leg up. I'm not kidding.
Ooh, I like it. That's underhanded.
The current RB6 is Leonard Fournette, who was RB32 in the preseason. My best ball teams are loving that.
Yeah.
Lombardi Lenny.
Yes. And of course, Cordero Patterson was RB88.
Just like
in
we
ADP,
all had it.
And is RB4 currently.
We all had this.
I have to eat so much crow because I had a buddy trade DeAndre Hopkins for Kittle on IR and Cordero Patterson, and even though Cordero was like doing good, I was like, dude, come on, like, what do you mean? What are you doing? You're killing us out here. I have to play him this week, and Hop has been effectively hurt since that point.
Is that guy from the future?
I really think he is, and I've had to eat so
traveler?
much crow about it. He goes, "You do this for a living?" I'm like, "Nope, I don't.
No,
don't worry about it."
No, Mason, I will say I've been making this joke to Steve because we've been doing this forever, and I will say the joke I've been making is I've never been more right about something 9 years later. Yeah. With Cordero Patterson on a 9, I had missed it by 9 years. I had it
so close,
so close.
Well, again, my greater point here is you have guys like who are still going around that area, like Antonio Gibson, CEH. Remember, this was supposed to be the resurgence year for CEH.
Well, no, it wasn't, but that's what
David Montgomery, Chris Carson, whose career is basically over, James Robinson, who leapfrogged all the way up to the top because of the injuries that happened there, and then you've got Swift at 18, Jacobs, Miles Sanders. That rounds out the top 20. I think, if anything, it's more of draft your guys, draft the guys you believe in. Like, again, there was no scenario where we were going to let Deandre Swift get out of the third round. That was never going to happen. That was never going to happen in any draft we were in, and it didn't, and it paid off. The same thing was with Joe Mixon. We had him projected as a top 10 guy, and that's cashed so far. Najee Harris was another one. We hit on Jonathan Taylor, but like Saquon
I was recommending
Barkley.
Austin Eckler early. That's been good to this point this
but
season.
Like Saquon Barkley struggled with injuries, and at this point, I don't know where to rank Saquon Barkley anymore. Aaron Jones has only missed one game. Like, I would love to blame Aaron Jones' season on him being out for an extended period of time, but he's only missed one game, and he's barely in the top 20.
You got to blame LaFleur. We always do.
He literally has the same points per game right now as Elijah Mitchell.
Ooh.
They're both in the top 20, but one of those guys you could have for free.
That's an unhappy stat. But Elijah Mitchell is like the James Robinson thing,
right?
Like that's
James Conner ended up being the running back in Arizona. He's ahead of all those guys. Darrell Henderson is borderline. He's number 11 in points per game. And he was a guy going outside the top 20.
And your question was, so are we going to put more credence into zero running back moving forward?
Mm-hmm.
And as a person who did zero running back heavily this year, I could tell you that it was a big worry early on. And it did reinforce the fact that waiting on running back did hurt me. But throughout the season, it has put me in a much better position for guys that I drafted relatively early, whether it be Stephon Diggs or whether it be Devontae Adams or whoever it may have been, Cooper Kupp, whoever it may have been in those, at back half of the first round, maybe you're double tapping wide receiver. It seems like a really good idea. And I loved the idea, but it was scary and it did hurt me. And it makes sure that you have to be very active to catch these falling knives that are the running back waiver wire. So yes, you can. I think it carries value. In a long-term sense, I think it does, because we love to talk about these back-end wide receivers carrying a lot of value. Yes, they do. But then when the games fly, Stephon Diggs is still getting these targets. Right. It's still the guys that we know. It's still the guys that we pegged as being very highly projected. And I think that I think it maybe gives it a little more credence, but I don't think it necessarily completely is like.
If you're going to cherry pick examples at me to make your argument, though,
I am,
because I can do that. And I can do that in reverse.
That's how arguments
work.
work.
Listen to my show?
Well, no, see,
I'm in and
that's
out.
I was
I
gonna
actually
say
just
the same
download it. I
thing,
don't
Neil.
listen.
Uh,
All you want is my clip.
I was just going to say the same thing because I've seen people out there bragging about, oh, look at like the whole argument that I've gotten against zero RB is it can literally never win. It can literally never work. Look at my team. And his team is Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams, and he's got Debo, and he's got basically all guys that he hit on. First 5 picks were all cashes at wide receiver. And then he got a couple of running backs either off the waiver or he got like Leonard Fournette and it cashed into a top 5, top 10 PPR running back. Like it can work. Any strategy can work if you pick 100% of the correct players.
Yeah, exactly. Which is really hard to do. That's always the problem, no matter what your overarching strategy is. Because I could make that argument back to you. You drafted Allen Robinson, DeAndre Hopkins, and
I did that too.
I
did that one too.
No, you went 0 RB, and your first 3 picks were Calvin Ridley, Allen Robinson, and Robert Woods.
Exactly.
Like, those were the 3 guys you started with, and you went 0 RB. Like you're a 2-win team right now.
Yeah,
your season's over.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it's all about just. That's why it's so difficult to predict these injuries and things like that. And we don't necessarily know who's going to struggle. And then like Amari Cooper would be another one who like all over the place and then gets COVID and misses a bunch of games. And it's just like, that would also kill you.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different.
My money was on that being Kirk.
But 100.
My money was
Cole
on that being
Beasley.
Cole Beasley. Yeah.
Beasley too. There we go.
But to me, like anything like that, 0 RB, 0 wide receiver, anything with 0 in it doesn't make any kind of sense to me. To me, it's all about balance. It's giving yourself options and avenues. Because if you've got, for example, you had Christian McCaffrey and then you got DeAndre Swift later. Well, you had a good 1-2 punch. Now you no longer have McCaffrey, but you still have Swift. You still have a running back when you need to play 2 a week. If you go all wide receiver at the beginning and a couple of them go down, you still have depth and options, but you're weak at running back and you're weak at wide receiver. Now you've got 2 holes to fill instead of 1. Whereas if you just make yourself balanced across the board, you can get better. You can make trades to get better. You can work the waiver wire just like those 0 RB guys and cash. But you have to have the base to begin with.
Yeah, this is why I always tell people, you don't pick a strategy and go into your draft saying, I am going to do this strategy.
Sure.
That almost never works.
Yeah.
What you do is you be fluid. And you go in and if wherever possible, you let the draft happen and then you react to what other people do.
Yep.
That's the way to have sustained success at this.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you do that, let other people make the decisions for you to a certain extent. Not like you have no input, but just be fluid. If don't reach on stuff, and for the love of God, use rankings for your draft. If you're actually like using with tiers, for the love of God, even if you put the tiers on yourself, draw it on there with a pen. I know I sound 100 like if somebody would actually print off paper, but highlight it on your spreadsheet that you're using or whatever it is you're using so that you don't accidentally do something dumb where you suddenly reach for something, because that's the most common mistake we always talk about.
Right.
Somebody sees something, they see a run on a position, and they go, oh, I got to get one before it's all gone. And there are times when that can happen. But that's actually a lot more rare than I think what people give it credit. I'd almost rather wait, take something else, drop a tier at a position if I have to. And frankly, moving forward with tight end, just wait until the end. Like, if you can't get like Travis Kelce, I'm done. I'll roll around in the garbage.
But even then, I don't want to spend a first round pick.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
I don't care how good he is.
I'm pretty much just done for next year. That's the lesson from this year for me. Go
ahead. Sorry.
I was like, we had the big 3, and at this point, I'm like, it's not even relevant anymore. It's just don't draft a tight end.
Right.
Wait until the end.
And when we're talking about like draft, and it comes off that I was like super positive zero running back, but I want to get across that my very first 5-6 weeks were nerve wracking. I'm starting guys like Jamal Williams at running back. I'm hoping that Javonte Williams gets carries. Like, I'm a mess.
That's scary at the beginning of the year. Yeah,
exactly. So just don't like we're talking about. You want to move into your values, because people are going to make those mistakes. Let them make them, and you pick up the pieces, and that's how you win fantasy championships, because pieces fall into your lap that never should have been there, And then people sit there and look at your team and go, how did we let Neil get another great team this year? All your friends and family are kicking themselves. And that's how it works.
Yep. 100%. And yeah, I'm with you on the tight ends as well. Like at this point, because you look at it right now, as we stand, you've got Travis Kelce still number one. It's only by a point. And I say only a point, but
And that's with the buys and all that nonsense.
Well, that's per game.
Per game. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes
so
sense.
He's 1 point ahead of Mark Andrews. And those were two guys that you had to pay up in order to get. Right now, Gronk is 3 full points ahead of Darren Waller, who was the next guy going off the board.
That's right.
He has the same, Waller has the same amount of points per game as Dawson Knox, who was going undrafted. He's got 1 point per game more than TJ Hawkinson and George Kittle.
Yeah.
And then you've got Dalton Schultz, who is averaging right now as many points as George Kittle.
And Dalton Schultz was a total afterthought. We were arguing all offseason about Dalton Schultz versus Blake Jarwin, for God's sake. Like
you've got 1.5 point difference between Dalton Schultz and Kyle Pitts, who
where's
is
Pat
the number
Freiermuth
4 guy getting pulled off the board. Freiermuth is down with Hunter Henry.
Are you trying to call Jason into the chat? Like,
yes.
You keep you can't say
calling his
Freiermuth.
Buzz players. He's gonna.
You can't say Freiermuth. Look, I will say this: we have given Jason. We've worked with Jason for years. I have given Jason so much expletive. Over what his opinions are over the years. We all have, because when he misses big. This year, however, I don't know what he's tapped into, what section of the universe he's occupying at this point, but he has hit at an alarming rate but not just for him. I mean, like in general, he's punching above his weight class for anybody at this point, because he has just been cashing left, right, and center. And at this point, I can't mock his buzz players like I've liked to do in other years when he's trying to tell me that Brandon Cooks will be like a top 5 wide receiver. Okay, he missed that one. But all the other ones that he's been trying to pound the table for, he's been right on. So I can't really argue.
But that was still impressive how long Brandon Cooks lasted.
Held for a while.
I know he held that a lot.
I was actually just thinking about that. He's 28 right now. He's wide receiver 28.
So anybody in the fantasy,
but he was the one saying that Cordarrelle Patterson was going to be the starting running back for Atlanta. Nobody bought that, and
nobody bought it. Nobody. And then I told him a million times, Pat Freiermuth is a 2022 fantasy thing to talk about. Nope. Mm-hmm. Wrong about that too. Nope. Took half a season. I can't believe how quickly Pat Freiermuth has ramped up.
Ebron's on IR, and he hasn't done anything anyway, so it doesn't matter.
So it's just like I can't mock Jason. We can't do our normal show, frankly.
I know, it's very sad and disappointing. But but you're right. Like it's a wasteland at tight end.
Where was Freiermuth though, real quick? Where was?
I think right now he's at 16, but it depends on if you want to look at like. I would say it's more fair to look at him from a recent point.
That's what I would do. I would actually go after the bye. So it's like from week 7 on or something.
So
is what I would do.
See. When did he start?
It was the game before the bye. He had his first good game.
No, he actually had a 7 in week 2 and an 11 in week 3.
Okay. It's not
and then he had a couple of stinkers.
Yeah.
But he's actually been fairly consistent after he had a rough opening game. But let's say, like you're talking about, since the bye in week 7. So from week 8 on, Pat Freiermuth, on a points per game basis, Pat Freiermuth is tight end 3, right behind Kelce and Andrews.
Yeah.
He's a half a point ahead of George Kittle.
Off the waiver wire. That's a bad example to a certain extent, but
I mean, like Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz is a guy that was left for dead. You could have for free at the end of your drafts. Right now, he's a top 5 tight end. Dawson Knox, same deal, undrafted.
Hunter Henry was in the top 10 despite the fact that he doesn't do anything. He just catches a 2-yard touchdown in every game.
Right. If he doesn't catch a touchdown, though, he's useless. Like
but he caught 5 in a row, so it doesn't matter because that's all it takes to get into the top 10 at tight end.
Right. But let's see. What are these?
That's all it takes to get the top 5.
Jack Doyle, Tyler Conklin, Cole Kmet. These are all guys that have had decent weeks, top 10 games for tight end that you paid nothing for, and paying up for a tight end did nothing for you. So,
yeah,
I'm on the same page with you.
I think that when we look at tight end too, you have to figure in schemes more than other teams, because some teams just absolutely refuse to use tight end, and something like that is why you get a guy like Hunter Henry. Like you might have been able to project something like that because that offense is obviously going to highlight a tight end when they've, invested so much into it and they've been known to do it in the past. So
the hard part about that is the fact that they got 2 in one offseason.
Right.
Jonnu in there. That was the hard part.
I think, especially with us, I mean, we're all very high on Jonnu, so it's like it was.
Steve has a whole closet full of Jonnu Smith type.
Yeah, you didn't want to open this door over here.
It's like insane.
It's a little disturbing, but
well, the shrine is also what's disturbing.
Don't worry about it. It's fine.
You ever seen Hey Arnold?
This is
like
fine.
It's a lot like that. It's a lot like that.
Yeah, just don't move those coats.
It's don't dig too deep into that.
So yeah, I agree though.
But that was just the main thing I wanted to talk about was the fact that, the argument we're going to get from this offseason is basically the top 10 guys in ADP drafted missed at least on average 3 games, at least, because again, that doesn't include Dalvin Cook potentially missing time here. That doesn't include Kamara missing this week and maybe more. That doesn't include if Zeke actually does go down with this knee injury that's been bothering him. Like these are all guys who have had at least a couple of games they have missed. So is it worth it to use a first round pick on a running back? And I still believe yes, because when you look at guys like Derrick Henry, who were still going borderline top 4, sometimes outside of the top 5 in some scenarios, because people kept thinking Derrick Henry was dead. Guys like Kamara kept falling off the board. And again, we talked about guys like Swift who were just getting faded for no apparent reason. You have to take those chances later in the draft, and you have to take an elite guy at the top end. You have to build your roster around it. It's just trying to identify him.
I think the biggest thing for me is it's not so much about the position. It's more just about
the player.
The player, yes. But what I was actually going to say is draft position. The longer we do this, and we've been doing this for like 15 years, we just only been recording it for 5. The thing that I've been noticing more and more the longer this goes, I really just hate picking in the top part of it. I would much rather just pick at 12 in every draft we do. I'd bookend it, and I'll let everybody else make their decisions, and I'll adjust to that.
Yeah.
I would much rather live my life that way. I do not like picking 1 anymore because you just don't know. And it's too long of a gap from when you pick at 1. Because if you...
you're not picking at 1. You're not picking at 1. The expert is picking at 1. The consensus is picking at 1. You're not picking at 1.
Right.
Because
exactly.
You're gonna get clowned by your league and your friends and your family if you're going off script there. And that's where...
Go ahead. To your point, Neil, what you were saying, when you have that top tier pick, like the best strategy you can have when you go into it isn't a set 0 RB, 0 wide receiver, whatever. It's to be water. It's be fluid. It's be able to adjust on the fly. Let the draft come to you. The draft can't come to you if you're number 1. There's nowhere to go.
Yeah, I don't. That's why I don't like being 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't like setting the pace.
I can't. If I take Christian McCaffrey number 1, and then all of a sudden everybody in the first and second round takes wide receivers, well, I'm going to end up getting a decent running back fall back to me to the 2-3 turn, but I'm going to be way out on wide receiver, and my entire team is going to be very lopsided. Mm-hmm. So it kind of flips all your strategy. Whereas like what you're saying, when you're picking at 10, 11, 12 on the back end, you can kind of see what's happened in the front end, kind of look ahead to what might be happening in the second and third rounds before it gets back to you again. So and I'll give you a better idea.
And then pick again, and then just wait.
Yeah.
And let people do what they do. And I find that I come out with the best teams that way more often than not.
And then the general consensus with why people always want to pick first is, well, I'm getting in a 12 team, I'm getting 3 players in the top 25. Well, as we've kind of established throughout this, it doesn't end that way. It might have started that these are the top 25, but that's not how it's ending. And we're highlighting all these players that, that's a huge part of our job is highlighting who went higher, who went lower, what happened. And it just doesn't ever come out, no matter how much research you do, no matter how much we prep, no matter, how much you listen to the experts, you're going to run into these situations where you pick 3 players and you did not hit on all of them. And it doesn't look as good as, like you just said, you could play fluidly and get more value that way, as opposed
to what you're saying too. If you just played auto pick and you took the best 3 players in ADP with the number 1 choice, you took 3 players in the top 25, right? Your roster would be CMC, AJ Brown, and CEH.
Which you felt great about.
Felt great about at the end of
One
draft
day, until
the one game they played together. The one week they were all on the field.
You're going to miss the playoffs.
And you have 4 wins this year.
You're done. So it's the longer this goes, the more we do this, and the more experienced we get with it. Because like I said, we've been doing this for 15 years, like all in, and it's like. The older I get, the more experience we get, the more I just realize I really hate picking in those early spots.
Yeah.
I do not want to be in charge. I do not want to be the one that has to make decisions. I want to let all the other people make their choices.
Yeah.
And it's funny because we've had people challenge that over the years where it's like, why would you actively volunteer to want to pick at 12? You get the 12th best player off the board. And I'm like, look, I'm the one who made the rank. Well, I'm the one who made the rankings.
I'm getting the
so I'll tell you what my
player
confidence is in my own rankings.
Yeah.
Like I know that they're pretty
the thing
good
too. Like
but...
you get like the argument for number 1 is you get 3 players in the top 25. If I get number 12, I get 2 players in the top 13.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, and depending on how, and just like to Neil's point, depending on how your draft falls, I might be picking the 5th best player at 10.
Yeah.
I have a family.
I could be getting 2 players in my top 10. Yeah.
I had a family league that Zeke and Dalvin went 9 and 10.
Yeah.
Can you believe that? So
I can because it's a family league, and we had somebody in a family league we played in several years ago. We had someone take LaShawn McCoy number 1 overall, like 8 years after that would have been an acceptable choice, and even like that, it was really embarrassing. But that is a whole different story for a different day. The biggest thing is it's crazy because I don't even know. I still hate picking in the middle too.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I just end up with meh.
And the middle I'm okay with as well, because that gives you, I feel like, a solid base that you can build off of, but you have to be active on the waiver wire and in trades. You have to be willing to make trades and make your team better. But I feel like I'd rather be on one of the ends. I don't really want to be at the top, to what you're talking about. And
for ends, I feel like it allows you to reach just a little bit.
Yeah.
Go get that guy.
You can kind of get the players that you want and build the team how you want to build it. But yeah, I think for me in general, the question I've gotten the most too is like, how is it that you were drafting in the same general area, but your rosters are so wildly different? And like, it's because every draft is different. You can't go into it saying, these are like Swift. I love Deandre Swift, but I wasn't going into every single draft saying I'm leaving here with Deandre Swift no matter what. Like I'm paying up to get him. Like if he didn't fall to me where I wanted him, I didn't get him. It is what it is. Like I'm not going in trying to build the exact same roster across every single league. I would argue that you
really don't want to do that.
Yeah, I'm trying to build the best roster possible in every single league based on the scoring and everything else.
If you build the same roster in every league and then that roster gets hurt, you're effectively done playing fantasy football across all your leagues for the season.
Right. From a rooting standpoint.
For what it's worth, this is also the guy that has so many DJ shares that it's actually crazy.
I have a Deandre Swift issue like that too, where there are certain guys that transcend that little rule.
And I say all that knowing that I have a 90% share of Rashad Bateman across.
Right.
I understand it, but not the rosters aren't completely identical though. Okay. Except for that one player who happens to be there on every roster. It's mostly diversified.
And that's also a function of same thing with the Bateman thing for you and the Swift thing for me. Neither one of us go into the draft saying, I will roster this no matter what. It's just a function of our rankings where it's like, I have this player ranked so much higher that there is zero chance anyone's going to outdraft me because that's where I'm willing to go.
Yeah.
And that's just a function of how that happens.
That's the top of it for me.
And that's how that usually works. But it's really interesting to do. I will say this: we are the only podcast that is doing a draft strategy show on trade
in the middle of the season.
Yeah. On trade deadline day.
That's right.
For standard leagues.
That's how we do it.
That is today.
That's how we do it.
Yeah, that's how we roll. We zig when others zag. They want to talk about trade deadline day? No.
It's called self-reflection.
Exactly.
We
understand. Okay.
It is.
Right. We also know our brand.
Most down to earth.
The people are here for the draft strategies in the middle of December. They're ready.
Well, there's no reason to talk about trades at this point because in all likelihood, your trade deadline is done at this point for today. So,
but we appreciate you all checking us out again. The big one is patreon.com/important nonsense. That's what helps us out most effectively and the easiest. If you check that out, $1 gets you into the chat. Talk with us in the Discord. We'll help set your lineups. for the playoffs. Get you ready to go for that. Also, we got tons of content coming through the rest of this month. So even if your team is currently out, don't forget we have all of our DFS content. We have all of our sports betting content. We will be with you through the playoffs and into the Super Bowl. So we are extremely excited for all the stuff we've got going on around here. Check us out there on the website, importantnonsense.com, at NonsenseFF everywhere. Mason, you want to plug anything? I mean,
come check our Discord out. That's where all of our great picks are. They pay for your access right there and some. So come in, talk to us. You could, talk about Jack's mustache. That's usually a big hit in the Discord for sure.
100%.
If you want to talk about pro wrestling, which I do not understand, feel free. There's a whole group of people that would be happy to talk to you about pro wrestling.
It's mostly me shouting at myself, but I'm all right with that.
Yeah, it does happen.
It's fine.
But sign up to get Mason's picks because number one against the money line the last time I checked in with you on BetSperts, which is
and
that alone will pay for any Patreon fees you would incur, by the way.
Exactly. It's a subscription that pays for itself. There you go.
Exactly.
Neil, got any pluggables for us?
Oh, pluggables. See, we already did the shameless Patreon.
Yeah.
Shameless
the plug and Discord.
Yeah, and Discord. So beyond that, I will say I won't necessarily do a plug, but I will say this. I hope that you were successful in acquiring certain players before trade deadline day. I hope you were able to collect Waddle, as I was recommending before last week's huge blow-up game. You are welcome to those who were paying attention. And sorry about Michael Pittman. Sorry. Oh, sorry, something in my throat there. If somebody wants to go email the Colts about their Michael Pittman usage, I would really appreciate that for me. Do that. Go get a social media.
We can't email them, then there's a paper trail.
Exactly.
Oh, right.
Mm-hmm. That's
Smoke signal.
Yeah.
Skywriting.
Yeah.
That's right. If
but
anybody can afford a billboard in Indy, give me a call.
Yeah.
We'll help. We'll help fund it. We'll help fund it. Don't you worry. I'll get a hat
but
going
again,
around.
At Football Mace, at nonsense_Neil, at nonsense_Steve. Much like the summer of George, this is the week of Steve. So I will be back tomorrow and Friday. If you don't like listening or seeing me, too bad, because I will be here. So
why are you here?
Get used to it.
What?
Exactly. So until tomorrow for me, but until next week for the show, keep up the nonsense.
Music for this podcast is provided by Lee Rosevere. I'm Tim Kitzer from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, and you can find all the guys at ImportantNonsense.com. Kaboom!